countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world.
Hey! That, ladies and gentlemen, is the wonderful J.A. Scott here on the Last Comic Shop podcast, reading some Herman Melville, Moby Dick, which plays a slight role in today's comic book review.
Rocking back and forth, I mean, it puts me to sleep. And the Moby Dick.
Oh, snap! We've got some folks that weren't really a fan of the Bone this week. I'm the host.
Oh, you're starting too early. We're opening the shop up to people that read Bone and liked it, and then their buddy says, it's clearly the best thing ever. And they're like, clearly? I don't know if it's clearly. And then we fight for 45 minutes while I'm trying to work at a real job.
I did not say it was the best thing ever, but I did say that you have to convince me this isn't a 4, Chad, not the opposite way around. I'm the host of the most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by Chad Smith, who has a different opinion of Bone on today's program, as well as J.A. Scott. This was his pick this week. And we're also joined by the wonderful Ethan Larson. This was one of the comic books that kind of got you into comic books, right, Ethan?
Yeah, I mean, it was the only thing that was remotely, like, approachable in a comic book store when I was, like, 9 or 10. It was something going back, and I started remembering the story, so that was something. Got the member berries, I think. And you know what the best part about that is because of my brother Ethan, and for some reason not wanting the issues, I ended up inheriting his collection of Bone comics from way back in the day. And I'm talking about the first 16 issues with the cartoon books logo on them. Those are fairly rare books nowadays. Right. Not the reprints from Scholastic or Image or anything, but the original cartoon books issues of Bone. Thanks to Ethan and saving his pennies when he was a young lad. I get this.
I see what this is about then. It's a financial game. Makes more sense.
Now he wants to give it a 4 just so it can, go up in value a little bit.
That's right.
Yes, because Andy Larson's opinion of Bone is going to be more impressive than, the fact that it sold millions of copies. Whether it was through Scholastic and book fairs, Bone has been tremendous for the comic book industry, and especially in regards to getting young readers into it. And we are reading the first 2 volumes of Bone on this week's show. That would be Out of Boneville is the first one, and then the second volume is called The Great Cow Race.
It's surprising that this hasn't got adapted.
Well, it was going to be. It was optioned for Netflix. It was all ready to be animated. This was around the time of COVID, when all of a sudden, Netflix decided to stop all of their, comic book related projects. And so Bone went high and dry. And to this day, I still think it was the wrong idea. I mean, a Bone animated series was, to me, a license to print money.
It's what all the kids were into, but speaking of what the kids are into.
That's right. Ethan has decided that we are not hip enough on the Last Comic Shop. And as you might not know, Ethan is one of the major creative forces behind a lot of our games that we have on the Last Comic Shop. And he decided it's time for a new one.
Yes, once TikTok is banned and not banned and then back to banned, and I'm not sure what the status is right now. I think it's up and running right now. But yes, this is a segment that's very popular on TikTok and also Instagram Reels or Facebook Reels. We're doing a blind ranking. Basically what that means is I'm going to give you guys a subject, and I'm going to give you 5 choices, and you're going to rank them 1 through 5, and you can't change them, and you don't know what's coming next.
I was going to ask, is the algorithm still as such where it's popular and Reels just 2 weeks later?
Yes, sir.
And we don't have a special name for this particular game other than blind rankings?
What all the kids are doing? What all the blind kids are doing?
Should we fit in Daredevil somehow?
There you go.
I see what you did there.
The Murdoch.
Yeah, Murdoch moments. There you go. All right, well, we're just going to call it blind rankings because then the kids will know what we're talking about. So without further ado, Ethan's going to be our host for this segment. What is our first blind rank?
All right, so I'm going to need y'all to rank these Batman movies.
He's going to start fights right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate.
All right, so starting off with the first choice, which is Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice.
Oh, that's 5. That's like the bottom, right? There's not anything worse than that.
Is it worse than the George Clooney Batman movie?
I would watch that one before Dawn of Justice. I fell asleep. Chad, you're the type.
I like Batfleck, but
Martha!
yeah, that's so stupid. Never mind, it's 5.
He breaks into that room and takes all those dudes out and gives them all comas. That's pretty awesome, though, right?
Maybe, but doesn't that happen like in the first 10 seconds?
No. This gets demerits because this was the first movie that introduced that terrible Wonder Woman score. She comes into the room and the guitar's like,
All right, that's 5.
So I think I'm gonna. I'm with you guys. I like 5. The Batman with Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, 2. I'm going to say 2.
holy moly.
I mean, he only has 3 more, right?
You're going to put that one above all the Burtons, all the Batman 66s, all the...
Fine, 3. How about 3? Can we put it at 3? Like middle of the road?
Yeah, I think 3.
It's pretty good. I think 3's high, but whatever. It's fine. It should have been a miniseries.
Y'all got 1, 2, and 4 still left. Batman Forever, the only Val Kilmer Batman.
He was such a great Batman, but everything else...
Yeah.
I don't think it's that bad of a movie, honestly.
It's just got the wrong title. It should be titled Batman and Robin.
It's true. But Tommy Lee Jones is just an awful Two-Face. Just awful. He mailed that in. I mean, Jim Carrey's pretty good as the Riddler. He does try to tap some Frank Ocean. I would say 4. Okay, there has to be better movies than these.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, put it at 4.
Yeah.
All right, so we got 1 and 2 left. Batman Returns.
2.
Setting up where it's going to be the Batman Returns better than that Christopher Nolan, the Bane movie.
What do you say?
Yeah, but
the Bane movie has that one airplane sequence, which is awesome. It's awesome.
But if we leave that he comes in with George Clooney, what are we going to do? We have to end the whole game and burn everything down to the ground.
Yes.
But we're going to put Batman Returns on top? I mean, I guess it has Christopher Walken, it has Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. I mean...
Yes.
It's so weird. Wonderful.
All right, fine. We'll put it at 1.
I think that's a mistake, too. There's no good choice here. There's no good choice!
I think you set us up to fail. It's at 1. Lock it in.
All right, so now that on the default, number 2 is going to be Batman 66.
That's if he won! That's if he won!
No, I don't think so. I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm actually quite happy with that ranking. I think we nailed that one.
So we got Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice number 5, Batman Forever number 4, The Batman number 3, Batman 66 number 2, and Batman Returns is number 1.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I would have fought for 66 to be number 1, but that's tough to get rid of a bomb sometimes. I think all things considered, we did all right.
All right, so next category is, I'm going to need y'all to rank the comic book characters that can regenerate.
Ooh.
Comic book characters that can regenerate. Starting off with Deadpool. Just throwing him out there.
2?
So you got 2.
Yeah, I'll go 2.
Yeah, there's got to be somebody better. I mean, Wolverine comes to mind, even if he...
The other one we can think of?
No, I mean, I would say that the Hulk regenerates. If they threw the Hulk out there, I would put Hulk number 1 above Deadpool, for sure. I think that's just me, but yeah, let's go with 2.
All right, next one is Swamp Thing.
Mikey's not on this show, so we can't put him at number 1.
3?
I'm okay with it. Swamp Thing's good and weird. My big problem is, like I alluded to earlier, I can only think of one other regenerative character. But yeah, Swamp Thing's he's a good middle guy, I think.
Yeah.
I was going to put him at 4, but I could be swayed to 3. 3's fine.
All right, so we got him at 3. All right, Omega Red.
5.
That's a 5.
Not even going to argue on that. Sure.
All right, we got next one up is Lobo.
Ooh. See, he would have been 3 for me. I would have put him above Swamp Thing. Penis elbow? Penis elbow, come on.
4. He's a 4, and now we've locked in God knows who in the number 1 spot. All because we're thinking of friggin' Wolverine.
Here comes number 1. The last one that you already locked into is Silver Surfer.
Oh.
I like this.
Yeah.
Sure.
Silver Surfer number 1, Deadpool number 2, Swamp Thing number 3, Lobo at number 4, and Omega Red as a deep 5.
I think that is a true ranking for the last Comic Shop podcast, given how many episodes we've done about Silver Surfer, given it's J.A.'s favorite character. And Deadpool number 2, that's one of Chad's favorites. So that's a good list for us. I am feeling good, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's working for 2 as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Now let's screw it up.
All right, so here comes 2 pretty challenging ones. I'm going to admit this. This was some of my hardest ones that I personally try to do my own rankings, and I was faltering, man. All right, so I'm not going to need y'all to blind rank these writers of Spider-Man.
Okay.
And we're going to start off with Brian Michael Bendis.
I mean, Ultimate Spider-Man did reinvent the wheel there. Gosh.
4.
4? I was going to say 3. I was going to give him a middle-of-the-road guy.
Yeah, but when I hear Brian Michael Bendis, the first thing I think of is not Spider-Man.
I've heard 100 and a bajillion issues.
I don't know. What else does he write? Avengers?
New Avengers, where he put Spider-Man. Daredevil, where he had Spider-Man show up for a couple issues. I'd be okay with 3 or 4. 4's fine. 4's fine.
All right, 4 it is.
All right, Stan the Man.
Number one.
Now, wait. Time out. This has to come with the acknowledgement that it's really Steve Ditko.
Oh yeah. So Stan and Steve.
I
learned something this week. I didn't know that Steve Ditko is the one who invented the corner box.
There you go.
Yeah, number 1. I think that's hard to.
Next one up is the longest running writer of Spider-Man, Dan Slott.
5.
Wow, that's Chad's at the doctor and they just whacked his knee with that hammer thingy.
So glad we still had 5.
It's a reflex. But now I'm feeling bad about Brian Michael Bendis. He should not be down there with Slott.
Well, no, he's not. The gulf between 4 and 5 might be massive if 2 and 3 are like bangers.
Okay, all right, fine. He is at 5. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. Dan Slott, I want to emphasize, he's a great idea guy. And as long as he's writing a character that you don't care about, he's a really solid writer. I'm very happy that he's over in DC now, playing with those guys. That's going to be great for him. But when he writes the character that you love for 10 solid years plus and doesn't let go, and it's such a great idea. Spider-Verse was his idea. The story's terrible.
And he put Peter Parker in a relationship with Mockingbird? Who thought that was a good idea?
He turned him into Iron Man from the 1960s. And it was like, no, this is fun. It's not fun, Dan Slott. And then he came up with No One Dies, which was the dumbest motherfucking thing I've ever heard in my life for a grown man to say, and to base stories around for a bunch of issues.
All right, what do we got here? We got
J. Michael Straczynski.
Ooh, we just read stuff by J. Michael earlier this year, and what did we say, Chad? That he was a good starter out of the gate?
Yeah, great starter. Issue 36, that the September 11th issue?
I was going to say, that's like the most powerful Spider-Man issue. Up there.
The Captain America, sometimes you got to be a tree, and people tell you to move, and say, no, you move. Like, he has great stuff. If we didn't already have Bendis locked in at 4, would I put him below Bendis? I would. But
he's going to go in 3. Yeah, we got to see who you're throwing out for 2.
All right, and the last person I got is Howard Mackey.
Howard Mackey. Yeah. Evidently, he's 2. Sure.
Yep.
Was he Clone Wars guy?
It's a 90s Spider-Man. Lots of the J.R. Jr. stuff with the mobsters and the.
Yeah, read a lot of his stuff.
He's fine. He blew up Mary Jane in an airplane, brought her back. It's fine.
What I'm hearing is we probably put Bendis too low.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, Bendis should have been like, at least with this ranking, he should have been at 2.
But what happens if instead of Howard Mackey, it's J.M. DeMatteis?
Well, then
there's a lot of really great people that we left out here. Jerry Conway.
Roger Stern.
All right, so the rankings is Stan Lee and Steve Ditko number 1, Howard Mackey number 2, J. Michael Straczynski number 3, Brian Michael Bendis 4, and Dan Slott number 5.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to get some pushback on that.
Well, we got 1 and 5 right, though.
There you go.
You got the easy one right.
I'm going to need y'all to rank these team leaders from DC and Marvel. Starting off is Cyclops.
Oh, that's the toughest one. He's screwed up a lot.
Yeah.
Right. J.A.'s saying a 2 on this. Why?
Well, because he's not even the best leader on his own team.
Right. But why is he
That isn't helping your argument.
No, that's why he's not number 1.
4.
Oh, okay.
I put him like middle of the road, if not 4.
3?
Yeah.
4. Let's go 4 on that. There's
Wow, you talked him down to 4.
That's pretty low.
There are people that show better leadership than Cyclops, and I'll go on record saying I can prove it.
All right, Iron Man.
He's a 5. Come on.
No,
He's an alcoholic.
Recovered.
he's the face of the MCU.
Okay.
There's only Captain America is more of a leader of the Avengers than Iron Man. Has been a leader of the Avengers longer than Iron Man is Captain America. So he's like, when he comes to leaders of the Avengers, he's like the second guy.
All right, wait. What do you want out of your boss? You want someone who has a butt ton of money. Check. You want someone who's too busy playing with his roller skate boots to pay attention to what you're doing so you can do what you want and have freedom to make your own decisions. Check. You want somebody who sported a kickin' perm and mustache in the 80s.
I think he's a 3. I still think he's a 3.
He can't delegate.
He gave him a mansion. If they didn't, they wouldn't even have a house.
In the West Coast? I say 3.
All right. Fine.
Yeah.
3.
4 with Cyclops. Come on, you got to give us 3 on Iron Man.
Yeah. Robin.
Dick Grayson as the leader of the Teen Titans. That's a 2.
Yeah.
Better leader than Cyclops for sure.
He's the heart of the DC universe. He's the guy that keeps Batman going.
And all the kids know him. All the kids know him from Teen Titans Go. Like he's the leader there too. All right,
if somebody's got to be number 2. It's Robin.
Yeah.
Always number 2.
Yes.
All right, so this might be the person that Jay was alluding to. Storm.
Oh, she's number 1. Gotta be. Because she can't be 5.
Yeah,
I mean,
she's a
just by
better leader
default.
than Cyclops. Yeah, all right, fine. That's a
Just
number
ask
1.
Callisto.
And then the number 5 is Oracle.
All right, yes, leader of the Birds of Prey. Yeah, she's our 5. I mean,
I don't know if I would have put her above Cyclops.
no, I would. I don't think I put her above Iron Man or Robin or. Yeah, no, this is good. This is 1 to 5. I love Babs, but
Probably your best showing.
this was a good list, I think.
All right, so reading them back, we got Storm number 1, we got Robin number 2, we got Iron Man 3, Cyclops 4, and Oracle at 5.
Yeah,
It's just those baby hands for Robin.
All right, so here's the main event, y'all. I'm going to need y'all to blind rank these artists from the 90s.
Oh, I want to see the list.
that's not how this works.
I want to
That's
see
not
the
how this
list.
works. And I
right,
swear
so
to God, I'm not putting Rob Liefeld number 1. No, sir. No, I know he's going to be out there. I'm not putting him as number 1.
We're going to start this list off with J. Scott Campbell.
See, I need to see the list.
I will put him. I'll put him at 3. I think J. Scott Campbell is a solid middle of the road guy. I mean, I love his art. Love his art, but
like 90s guy. Like if you think of 90s art, I think he's got to be in the.
See, I disagree. My 90s start much earlier than J. Scott Campbell. He's late 90s. I would go 4 at best. Think of the Image guys. Are you putting them above Eric Larson, Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee?
You're right, but I don't know if we're going to get all those guys. He
might not, but
fine, 4 it is. I keep on getting told
he's
my
a
business.
cover guy. He doesn't do interior pages anymore.
But his covers are gorgeous. All right, what's next?
Mark Bagley.
I mean, he was on all of the Spider-Man merch in the 90s.
5.
Like,
Yeah. But listen, I love New Warriors. But he was on Spider-Man for too long, and he dressed Peter Parker like he was Crockett or Tubbs. I forget which one.
Yeah, is he the one with the big shoulder pads and
the white jacket or whatever? Yeah.
All right, number 5.
All right, so we got the big heavy hitter here, Jim Lee.
I mean, he's the 90s artist of all time, isn't he?
No, there's a guy that's more 90s artist than Jim Lee.
Know,
We just
I don't
haven't
think so.
Listen, Jim Lee rhymes with 3. I think that's meant to be.
How am I supposed to argue with that logic? I put him to 3. It's fine.
Man, that's a rough ranking for Jim Lee.
He lacks heart.
Right.
Todd McFarlane.
Number 1?
1.
Yeah, I'd go 1.
He's a better artist than Rob Liefeld. Saying it right now.
I didn't say that, but he was more exciting when he came onto the scene. Like his art had a serious impact, and like everybody wanted to be Todd McFarlane. I think he defined a part of the '90s, paved the way for some of the other guys too.
All right, who is going to be? Why don't you go ahead and just say it, Chad?
Oh, Rob Liefeld.
Yeah.
That's it. Listen, I know Rob Liefeld is not everybody's flavor, but I feel like he has inherited the mantle of the Jack Kirby excitement, right? It's not anatomically correct, but it is exciting. It's in your face. It's balls to the wall. And he's having fun with stuff out there. You wouldn't have Image without Rob Liefeld.
No, you wouldn't. No, and I think that's a good solid ranking. I can get behind that. I would put Rob above Jim Lee. To your point, Chad, his art has more soul than I feel Jim Lee's art has. It may look nice, but at the end of the day, I feel like everything kind of looks the same after a while. And
yeah, everything after like the Uncanny X-Men. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we got Todd McFarlane at number 1, Rob Liefeld number 2, Jim Lee number 3, J. Scott Campbell number 4, and Mark Bagley at number 5.
I think we won that. I would have agreed with that had I seen the people ahead of time.
I think we finished strong. But one name that we didn't say on that top 90s artist was Jeff Smith. And we're going to be talking about his tour de force, Bone, right after these commercial breaks. So stay tuned for more Last Comic Shop. Thanks so much, Ethan, for all of these awesome blind rankings.
Hey fellas, looking to save money on your collectible supplies? Whether it's comics, cards, sports memorabilia, or miscellaneous pop culture goodies, make sure to use promo code LCSPOD to get 10% off your orders at bcwsupplies.com. Not only does it get you a discount on BCW's already low prices, but using LCS Pod at checkout is an amazing way to show support to the Last Comic Shop podcast, the most incredible comic book podcast on the airwaves. So if you are in need of collectible supplies, head out to bcwsupplies.com and use promo code LCSPOD today. That's promo code LCSPOD.
Hey all, I'm Frank. Join me and my friends as we talk about all things geek. Here at Geek Freaks Podcast, we go over the weekly news of everything in geekdom, from movies to TV, to video games, and comic books. We also have a growing YouTube community. Join us as we go over everything in your geek life and share in the love of geekdom.
And we're back. And as you folks know, here at the Last Comic Shop, we love our comic shops. We hope everybody's getting out there supporting their shops, keeping those places going. But today we're going to talk about a book that kind of sort of circumvented the comic shops on its quest to become one of the most popular books of all time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Jeff Smith's Bone. So, Mr. J. Andrew Scott, can you tell us who was involved in the creation of Bone?
Jeff Smith.
Yeah, that's the one.
And to be fair, his wife, she was really sort of the big power behind the scenes because she was the business manager, and she helped get all these contracts with Scholastic. He was putting it out as a comic book. It was independent. It wasn't getting a lot of traction. This is back in the day when it's not very easy. Just do your own thing. There are more failures than successes on this. He was always pushing back against this being for young adults. He's like, it's for adults or all ages book. And Scholastic bought it and really marketed it for young adults and put it in school libraries, and it blew up from there.
Heck yeah. And Mr. Ethan Larson, who goes way back with Bone, can
yeah.
you give us the 10-cent synopsis of our first two collections, which was Out of Boneville and The Great Cow Race?
The Bones are funny little characters that remind me a lot of the Marx Brothers. I don't know if you picked up on that too, Andy. We got as Groucho, the everyday man, we got Phone Bone, who's the main character. And we got Phony Bone, which would probably be what Chico running every kind of scheme he can and gets them eventually thrown out of their hometown. And we got Smiley Bone, which is the Harpo Marx, the comic relief, goofy character. You could also relate them to Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy. I think they fit those archetypes pretty well. They get thrown out of Boneville. They're just trying to find someplace else to live, I guess, and get caught up in these rat creatures that are trying to hunt them down. And there's dragons, and there's a chick named Thorn who grew up with the dragons, and then there's Granny that races cows because she's weird. And it's just all very weird and surreal, and it's a lot to get into, but it's pretty relatable is what I would say. It's like any episode of DuckTales, or it reminded me a lot of this book that I recommended a long time ago. It was like Donald Duck and the Dragon Riders or something like that, where Huey, Dewey, and Louie and Donald Duck gets transported into this like medieval world. They're like kind of like fish out of water, but they are super relatable because you know their characters very well. That's pretty much what the Bone characters are. Yeah, I hope I summed it up pretty well, but there's a lot to dive into for sure.
There is a lot. These are the first two books of a, 55 book grand adventure from start to finish.
Definitely 9 volumes came out of this, collecting the entire Bone saga. And so, yeah, we're getting just the opening sliver of this amazing universe. I'm going to say, Ethan, I thought that you would have commented on the fact that this encapsulates everything that's wonderful about fairy tales. This is in essence a fairy tale, right? Like Thorn, as you later find out in later volumes, she's a princess. She's the heir to the throne of a fallen kingdom, and her parents were ghastly murdered by these rat creatures, and she was sent away with her grandmama, who was the former ruler. And ultimately, she's raised by some dragons, and then she forgets about it, and then here come the Bones. And again, those are characters that could have been, people. Jeff Smith could have drawn them as people, but instead he drew them as cartoon characters. Like if you ever read Little Abner, there's the
they look
Shmoo.
like bald Smurfs without any color.
I thought they were just pogos. The Walt Kelly.
Yes, the pogos. But that's what it is. And so not only do you get the relatable aspects of a story that's been told for generations, centuries, or whatever in regards to this kind of stuff, but also you get the added bonus of some of your main characters just being very easy to draw cartoon characters, which I thought was wonderful. There's so many wonderful, charming things about this book. But I'm not the one that's on trial here. My co-host Chad Smith, when I said this was easily a 4, and I don't know why you give all these other 4s, he's like, I don't know. So Chad, why don't you know?
All right, so this is where I come across as a jerk, which probably isn't undeserved. You had said this is clearly a 4. That's what got me a little bit, just because when I look at this book, and I want to come out of the gate and say that I had never read through the entirety of Bone before. I feel like I had read up through The Great Cow Race and then drifted away. But somewhere along the line, I managed to pick up the giant black and white collection over the holidays. I read through all 1,300 some pages. And let me just say that Jeff Smith, as a cartoonist, is a wonderful cartoonist. He's a top-tier cartoonist. The landscapes, the energy with the characters, the facial expressions. I thought all that was gangbusters. But I thought by the time I got to the end of the Bone Saga, I was like, pretty good. I don't know. Like, people talk about this in reverent tones, and I think the fact that it did so well and that Jeff Smith basically changed the way that comic books are sold. He had a mission to keep Bone in print even before the Scholastic deal so that the issues were always accessible. That wasn't how comic books worked.
Yeah, and there's this whole industry built behind comic books becoming less and less accessible.
Right. He was the opposite of that. And so he wanted his books always to be in print. And, that was something that he strived for. And then not only did he successfully get graphic novels into places, fought for them to be included, in the young adult sections and not just relegated to corner shelf somewhere far away, but that he made that deal with Scholastic, got them into schools. And riding that Scholastic train, those books sold way more than they ever would have in comic shops. He did so much for young adult literature and exposing kids, to the joy of reading, that kind of stuff. I think all that's great. But as far as the story goes, the 1,350-page story, I thought it was just okay. And that could be me because I'm not the biggest fantasy guy. Is it a great story, or is it just a really good story that was really successful? And the more questions I asked, the more I drove Andy crazy.
And before J.A. and Ethan jump in, I'm just going to simply say I remember when Bone first came out, right? I remember it was in the heart of the 90s when, if you remember the 90s and all the excess that was going on back then, like, again, the chromium covers and women with anatomically, very shapely bodies and all this other stuff that was going on, very dark, gritty stories. And here came Bone, decided to just tell a story that was all ages, that was refreshingly simple, with great cartooning, that harkened back to the original days of comics and comic strips, Pogo, Little Abner, Little Nemo in Dreamland, Peanuts, like all of that stuff. You can see it. You can see it in the way that he draws Bone and Smiley Bone and Phony Bone and the way they emote in some of these pages. And so you've got this book that's coming out in the 90s. And I remember that was the reason why I got Ethan involved with it, because I said I wanted to get him involved with comics because it was something that I was passionate about. I'm like, he was struggling with some of these other things. But I was like, this is a book that's not only well written, well drawn, but is different from everything else that's going on right now and is carving out a niche in this, this place. And for me, like, it's not just because of what it did with Scholastic later on in the young adult audience. It was doing that in the 90s. It was getting Wizard to pay attention to a book that was drawn about cartoon characters in the middle of, like, again, the image boom and all that stuff. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I'm not thinking about it in 90s eyes. I'm thinking about it in 2025 eyes. I have to ask the question, does Disney do it better? If this was Mickey, Donald, and Goofy, like I said before, wouldn't the story just have as much relevance? I mean, I don't know. Like, just some of the ways that the comic is, I think it's good, and I think it's good that it's, told, and I have to look at it from the perspective of the 90s. But if I'm looking at it from the perspective of today, there's so many other things that I think are a little bit better than what Bone actually does. And I almost think I'm sounding like I'm blasphemy, and you guys are looking at me like I have 5 heads right now.
That's where I'm coming from too, where it's the fact that it's one guy, it's super impressive.
Oh yeah.
You don't want to take anything away from the talent involved here.
No.
But in the Pantheon, like in the year 2075, are people going to be like, no, you have to read Bone?
Yes, I do think people will say you have to read Bone in 2075. I do think it's one of those instrumental, it's an important book. That doesn't mean it's necessarily the best book, but I think it's a very important book for multiple of reasons, not just because of the story it tells and the art and the humor, which I think we've kind of alluded to a bit, but haven't really talked about how funny it is. I mean, laugh out loud funny. I'm reading pages and I find myself laughing out loud at some of the, but maybe it's just because the humor appeals to me too.
Stupid rat creatures.
No, like it's like when the snow lands. Snow's coming.
Sheet.
Yes.
And how great is the scene where Phony Bone finds out that he's going to lose the gate cow race, and he runs up to Smiley and he's like, we got to win this race now. We got to win it. And he climbs in the costume that is a punchline that like takes 4 issues to get to. And once it happens, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is tremendous.
And then he gets stuck in the udders and he's like, kill me now. What I wanted to ask was, like, does this remind you of a European book?
Well, it does, but it reminds me of comic strips. right? Like, if you would have told me that Bone was a collection of comic strips, or Sunday strips or dailies or whatever, I could have easily seen that, because that's the way that Jeff Smith writes Bone in some ways. You can see it's 4 or 5 panels at a time, and it's usually a joke at the end. The other thing I could think of is, like, again, this is why it's infuriating that it wasn't animated, because this reminds me of a cartoon. Like, it's a cartoon.
Very Peanuts-like.
Right.
Yeah. The Animaniacs.
But I kind of want to go back to the fact not only was the humor really great, J.A., but I just thought that the pacing was incredibly well done in this. I mean, you're talking about a story that throughout that first, 6 issues, sometimes you read comic books and it doesn't logically move to the next step or logically keep that pacing or keep your interest. They give away their hand too early. They don't tease enough things. They don't foreshadow enough things. I think this had a really great pacing to it. It is the mark of a master storyteller. That's why I can say, you know what? Yeah, sure. You could do this story with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy, right? You know who would do that story? Carl Barks or Don Rosa. Like, those are the guys that did those books, but it wasn't just because of the characters. It's because of the writers behind it. Sure, Jeff Smith could have done this book with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. He would have done a great job with those characters, too. He just didn't. He did it with Bone. They were his characters.
Yeah. And it does have the hooks of a classic fantasy novel, because I've read a decent amount of fantasy in my day. Everybody is not who they seem, and there is something greater to everybody. And so I like that, you talked about the pacing, is that there is this mystery that has to be solved. And most great fantasies are like that, where there's this, you have to figure out, Strider from Aragon is actually the king of Aragon.
But no, Ethan, that's actually my biggest gripes come in, and I feel so bad being negative, because, like, this is a really fun book. And especially the first 2 collections that we read. But I do not have the fantasy background that you have. Fantasy isn't really my bag. I enjoyed The Lord of the Rings, and then I put it away. I didn't go back and reread it and memorize things like so many people have. But I didn't feel like the payoffs in here, having read through the whole thing, were worth it. Some of the things seemed a little cliche. Like, oh, she's the forgotten princess. All right. I don't know. The relationship between Thorne's family and the Locusts, it didn't blow me out of the water. I don't know. I'm going to stop being negative about it, because the cartooning is great. The pictures are great. The landscapes, the vistas.
The layouts are incredible. How he uses negative space and how he creates his panels. Like, there's in the first or the second issue when he's falling off the cliff.
Oh, yeah.
And you just see him falling, and I don't think there's any cliff. It's just him falling down this long vertical panel, and then he hits like a branch halfway down, and it's so funny.
But then immediately right after that, like a couple panels later, then you have like the cave and the big eyes of the dragon, and it just immediately, to me, it just pulls you in. It makes you want to keep reading. I've read this several times, but it's been a couple years. I could not put down the first volume. And maybe some of the things that you're talking about, Chad, is when you take the whole book as a whole. I'm really focusing on the first 2 volumes, right? These are the things that would hook people. And I'm like saying, gosh, for the first 2 volumes, for what we had to read, I'm sorry. Like, if you want a book that's going to hook somebody and get you to read more, it's kind of hard to beat Bone. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would tend to disagree. I think I'm leaning more towards Chad, unfortunately, and I hate to do this.
I'm sorry.
This was my childhood book, but I'm like, I read the first 2 chapters and I was like, okay, I've done my homework. And that's horrible to say.
Was it calling back memories?
It did. I actually recalled the entire story once I was reading it. I was like, oh shit, yeah, this is the cow race. This is this. So yeah, it came right back to me, almost like a dream. And I knew that, like, Phony Bone wanted to fix the race, and then, like, the barkeep was going to bet on the old woman because that's his sweetheart. And, because everybody, and like I said, in fantasy books is not who they seem. The knight in shining armor that's going to save everybody somehow. Is this like every other?
Oh, good grief.
Jay in our chat compared it to Armageddon. I wouldn't go that far and say it's Armageddon.
No. I wasn't comparing it to Armageddon. I was saying that there are things like Armageddon that are super well received and everybody wants to watch it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's great.
Right.
I wasn't saying that this was that.
Okay.
Andrew was saying, "Oh, it's sold so many copies, and just because something is popular doesn't necessarily mean that it's great art."
And this doesn't even have Liv Tyler and the those animal crackers.
All right. We're going to get to commercial break. I'm going to give J.A. a couple moments here to get his thoughts together and maybe come back onto my side as we'll get into our ratings coming up right after these commercial breaks. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Pat Morta. Looking for a special opportunity to read to your child? You'll find it at your library this April 30th, when libraries bring books and families together for National El Día de los Niños, El Día de los Libros, Children's Day Book Day. To learn more, please contact your local library or visit ala.org/DIA.
Do your hobbies include comic books, movies, television, and/or video games?
Are you always behind with the latest news in the world of nerd?
Well, look no further than The Oblivion Bar, a nerd culture podcast.
Oh, great Scott! Hosted by Chris Hacker and Aaron Knowles, The Oblivion Bar offers a weekly review of all the latest breaking news, in-depth discussions far beyond whether Han shot first, and newsletter section, where you, the listener, send in your questions to be answered live on the show.
New episodes every Monday, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts.
I'm just so freaking excited!
You can also find us on Twitter at Oblivion Bar Pod.
Come join us at the Oblivion Bar Podcast.
Hope to see you there.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for ratings, where we hope you don't pick a bone with us over what we would rate Jeff Smith's wonderful, well, I think it's wonderful, Bone series in the first 2 volumes. Any case, we got that rating scale coming from J.A. Scott. So, Jay, what do we got this week?
Before we get to that, I want to talk about, this is a book that was put out in various different ways. Originally published in black and white. When Scholastic republished it, they colored it. And then I think they're putting out new deluxe editions, which are bigger, but in black and white again, as it was originally published. So we need to talk about this. When they get then new volumes of it and they find out that it's black and white, they think that they've lost something.
I was going to say that when you talked about the negative space, because you lose that with the color versions. You lose some of that negative space. It looks pretty.
Yeah.
But like I prefer the black and white versions. Yeah. That's how I read it originally.
Black and white's always better.
Because I don't know. Like, for example, when we read Sexy Smurfs, Andrew was all about the black and white, but ElfQuest in color is incredible. Then
that's one of the big debates in comics in my head. Deals with comic book coloring. How additive is it? And there's sometimes where there's certain pages where wow, the color really helps me to figure out what's going on the page and understand what's happening. But then there are other times when I look at the black and white and it's like, oh, it's so pure. I haven't made up my mind which I like better because it changes from page to page.
It's almost like doing the manga and the anime adaptation.
That's one thing I always hate about manga. When you start it, it's all in color, it's beautiful, and then you hit page 4 and it's gone to black and white. You're like, ah!
Yeah, and then the action, you never know what.
You're already sucked in.
All right, well, we got to get the rating. So, J.A., again, I think we could spend all the day talking about color versus black and white, and maybe that'll be a completely different show. But for this show,
we're going to go with 1 out of 4 rat creatures, because I love those things.
Oh, yes.
Rat creatures.
In the quiches.
Wish we had a quiche.
I will say, that was one of the only times I did like the color version, is because they gave those 2 rat creatures that played off each other so well, they gave them different colors. Versus black and white, which they just look the same. So it kind of made them a little bit of different characters, even though they were kind of different characters before anyways. I'll go first, because this is a no-brainer. I said it earlier in the show. This is a 4. Bone is one of the best comic books out there. It will be one of the best comic books in 2075, whatever Chad said. It's going to be one of those books that, again, continues that wonderful tradition that started way back 75 years, even earlier than this show, even 100 years more than this show, in comic strips such as Little Nemo, the Cats and Jammer Kids, and Pogo, whether it's Alley Oop, whether it's the Carl Barks Duck Universe, which gave you relatable cartoon characters, gave you a huge world to play in, gave you great timing, great comedy, great adventure, great everything, great characterization. This is a wonderful book, and I'm so glad we revisited it. So I think it's a 4, period. Ethan, this was your childhood book. What
I want to see what JA's rating is. I don't want to go too low.
No, you got to go.
God, oh, shoot. I'm in between a 2.5 and a 3, honestly. I'm probably going to go 3. I'm judging this as a fantasy, and it's good fantasy. It's not great fantasy. So that's why I'm going to give it the ranking that I did. It brought back a lot of great memories. I thank you so much, Andy and JA, for recommending this book. If I had to pick something to read from that comic book store, I'm glad it was Bone. But would I give this to my daughter to pick up tomorrow? I'm not sure. So that's what I kind of weigh it as right now. It's good, but Disney does it better. I'm sorry to say it.
I don't know how you can say Disney does it better. Disney doesn't have this sense of humor. They're freaking corporate. This is so much not corporate. This is completely opposite. It's fun. It's well-paced, beautifully drawn. The black and white is so clean. The panel layouts, the pacing, the storytelling. Is it a bit ink by numbers from time to time? Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, it falls into some tropes, but they're also a reason why these things are tropes. They're age-old classic story hits that you see over and over again, and that's what draws us in as a reader to experiencing that. And I mean, laugh out loud funny. I don't think we've stressed enough of how great the humor is, the pacing of the jokes, how they land almost every time. There's a reason why it won all those Eisner Awards and is the most sold book in the world. And it's not just because it's Armageddon. Because it's not Armageddon. It's better than Armageddon, damn it.
It's Deep Impact, is that what you're saying? Which cannot be found anywhere. Like, Deep Impact does not exist as a movie. Like,
that's because Bruce Willis drilled those holes in the moon.
All right. What are you going to say? What is your rating?
I'm going to give it 3.75. I don't know. It's not quite a 4. I got the complete cartoon in one volume. Had I known they were coming out with deluxe editions, maybe I would have held off on that. But it's just great, and it's very easy to find too. Again, I like that. These are stories that you don't have to pay an arm and a leg on the secondary market to get.
Heck yeah, I got my copy. Water Damage, $6, whole thing.
Those rat creatures, those stupid rat creatures, always trying to destroy something.
All right. Well, I'm here's hoping that Chad's rating isn't water damaged. All right, sir, the floor is yours.
All right, I'm going to give it a 3.99. No, I'm kidding. I will say I enjoyed this a lot. And so as much as I've been harping on the things that I just don't understand sometimes, this was tons of fun. The cartooning is excellent. Jeff Smith is a great cartoonist. And honestly, having read through the whole thing, I think it's diminishing returns from the Great Cow Race. I think the most fun is in these first 2 chapters. And then they trade a lot of the fun for some fantasy epicness that doesn't always land with me, but that's because I'm not a big fantasy guy. It gets less cartoony and more about the battle with the locust creatures and the, was it King Doc and getting his arm cut off and all kinds of other stuff that a lot of it didn't land for me. And there are things that they set up that don't pay off later on that made me kind of frustrated. Like whenever Thorne meets the guy at the market, then
No, that's just to remind her how great Phone Bone is, please.
Yeah, that guy should have come back.
Shirtless Tom Sawyer.
And the other thing that gets
me... He was a snack, though.
He was.
He was a sexy man. I could see why she fell for him.
And
then he got Esmeralda at the end, and I was like, all right, Quasi, go back to your hole.
There you go. But no, and the other thing that I was really mad about, you have these Bone guys, right? And it's all about going back to Boneville. They never go back to Boneville. I wanted to see other Bones. Are they all just the same 2 body types? And oh, that guy has a star in his shirt. That's what makes him special. Oh, this guy, he wears a silly hat. I want to know what are all the what are those bones? What are they doing? I didn't get any other bones. I got dragons. I got locusts. I got caves and no more bones. I need more bones. It needs more bones. Them bones. I like them bones. But no, I did enjoy what was here, and I think that Jeff Smith did a really solid job. But at the end of the day, I am still going to stick with it's pretty good. I'm going to give the Larry David pretty good 3.75. Pretty good. I would still recommend you pick this up. I still think it's accessible. I still think it's lots of fun, and all the things we sing the praises for. It's pretty good.
One thing that we've got to get to is recommendations, and so we've got some other books in addition to Bone, which you can pick up in a variety of different ways, whether it's the original cartoon books, which you can find if you can, and then the Image re-released it, and then later on Scholastic re-released it, and then now there's this deluxe version, so there's a lot of different ways to get it, and we hope that you continue to support Jeff Smith and Bone because he's a wonderful artist. Give him some cash if you're inclined. But here's some other folks that you should throw some cash at. And we're going to start off with J.A. Scott. So, J.A., do you have something else for us?
I do. I am recommending The Complete Far Side.
Yeah.
By Gary Larson. It's a 3-book series. Comes in a beautiful slipcase that's sort of colored like a cow. You're talking about, this reminded you of comic strips and newspaper strips. That's where the Far Side made all of its money. And I mean, it's just great. As the New York Times said, it is sinister, perhaps, and perfect.
Oh, Lordy. Yeah, no, Gary Larson's Far Side. No relation, by the way. Ethan and I grew up with everybody asking. I was like, Larson is it's like Smith. Like, there's a lot of Larsons in the universe, but that's a recommendation I can get behind. And something you can find at your local libraries in droves. Like, you can find Far Side collections everywhere. Chad, what do you got for us?
So my recommendation is not a comic book. My recommendation is chess.com. You know why? Because Jeff Smith is playing chess while everybody else in the comic book industry was playing checkers, baby. This guy rerouted how things are done, became one of the most successful comic book artists of the 90s, keeping his books in print in a time, I started reading books in the 1980s, the late 1980s, where there were 4 graphic novels. That was it. You got a Watchmen, you got a Dark Knight Returns, you got a couple Batman compilations, and maybe you'd see a Marvel book on there, Son of Origins or something. But Jeff Smith not only kept his books in print, he got paperbacks, trade paperbacks, affordable paperbacks onto the comic market, and that changed the way that comic companies were doing things. They started getting trade paperbacks out there in the market. He put Bone and serialized it inside Disney Adventures magazine, which was mailed out to bajillions of kids. And then he signed that deal with Scholastic. And honestly, we talked about Jeff Smith doing great things for comics. And I think, because it's a comic, he's working within the medium and he's a great cartoonist. Like, all that stuff tracks. But I think he did more for young adult literature and getting kids to read and giving the young Ethan Larsons out there a lifeline when they went to the comic shops, that they might actually have some bones in there as well. But that was more of an afterthought. This was a guy that found a way to reach an audience that Marvel and DC have not been able to reach for decades. Like, to this day, Marvel and DC need to take lessons from Jeff Smith, like I said, who's playing chess when the rest of them are playing checkers. And so my recommendation is chess.com. It's a really great place to play chess. After your matches.
And then you could go to New York and play chess in the park with all those chess hustlers.
I wouldn't recommend that. You can hone your skills at chess.com.
All right, so mine's going to be like 7 recommendations in one. So I'm going to start with a weaving story about how I got to where my recommendation is. But I've been playing a lot of the game Metaphor ReFantasio. Fantastic game for PS5, Xbox Series X, PC, high fantasy from the creators of Persona. So I was playing this game. I love it. want to get more immersed into fantasy stuff, was listening to one of my other favorite podcasts, Axe of the Blood God, which is about RPGs. Had that as their game of the year, and they said that it reminded them a lot of 80s anime and manga, and so that made me start thinking, what was an anime from the 80s that was fantasy based? Oh, Record of Lodoss War. I've never actually read it or watched any of it, so I started consuming a little bit of it, dabbled in the Grey Witch, found out that isn't really in print anymore. So my recommendation is a newer version of Record of Lodoss War. The Crown of the Covenant came out in 2023. It's a little bit hard to get, honestly. You may have to go to a manga store that would sell this. Shout out to Joy's Jap Animation in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, or the Manga Spot in Towson Town Center and Towson, Maryland. If you're either one of those locations, feel free to hit them up. They sell manga, so they may or may not have this. This was issue 1, and it happens 100 years after the events that occur in Record of Lodoss War, and it's about a whole new kid being knighted and, all kinds of fantasy tropes. So it's very good stuff. Whatever gets your fancy. If you like RPGs, go listen to Axe of the Blood God. If you like RPGs and want to play them, play Metaphor Fantasio. Or if you just want to read some good fantasy, Record of Lodoss War, Crown of the Covenant. There you go.
I think I would listen to Axe of the Blood God just because of the name alone. Jeez, that sounds metal.
It's like the most non-metal show out there, but yes. It sounds
metal.
It sounds like it's like 3 librarians talking about RPGs, but it's very good. I like it.
So I only have one recommendation this week, and that is the tremendous work of what I want to feel is as a good friend of the show. It's a comic book artist and creator, Ben Morse. He's putting out a new Kickstarter with his character of Captain Lancet from We Are Scarlet Twilight. We've got the Cobalt Crisis coming out in Kickstarter. You can finally get it, and we really hope you do. But my recommendation is, I would highly recommend that you check out his first book, which made me fall in love with his art and his storytelling to begin with. We Are Scarlet Twilight starts off in the 1930s with a kind of golden age swashbuckling adventure type Captain Lancet, who is trying to bring down an evil cult who's going to be killing a Romanian princess or something like that, and ends up falling afoul of the Scarlet Twilight, who is this godlike creature that is summoned by these evil occultists. And fast forward to the future, lots of vampires, lots of swordplay, lots of high adventure, and just gorgeous, gorgeous art. I can't say it enough. I really do feel like Ben is one of my top 10 favorite artists nowadays. I really do like his stuff, whether it's this or his work on Captain August. I just love his stuff. And again, I'm hoping that Ben stops by the Last Comic Shop here in 2025 and reads another book. If you haven't checked it out, we've got awesome episodes with him in the back archive. He was on for Flash Gordon with us. He did Twilight by Howard Chaykin with us on a previous episode. So yeah, it's in our back catalog, and you can check out our back catalog by going out to www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, which is a tremendous place where you can rate, review, and subscribe and find all these past episodes, including awesome episodes featuring Ethan. Again, Ethan's been on a slew of awesome shows, including most downloaded still to this day episode of The Last Comic Shop. Yes, he was on our review of One Piece, which you can check out at your leisure over at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
And smash that 5-star review. Thank you all for listening to us. All of our, as Andy said, all of our episodes are evergreen. You want to go back and then listen to, like we said, the One Piece episode. As soon as I tell anybody about this show, I say, go listen to our One Piece episode. Oh, and they said, oh, yeah, you did One Piece? Of course we did One Piece. We did One Piece. We did Watchmen. We did whatever.
Other comic books.
Yes, Dark Knight Returns. Come on, man. It's coming. That's coming. I feel it in my bones.
There we go. And other things you can feel in your bones are our recommendations for this week. That's right. We're recommending things like Bone from Jeff Smith, which also coincidentally has a Kickstarter just like Andy's recommendation. The Kickstarter from Ben Morse for Cobalt Crisis, the sequel to We Are Scarlet Twilight. Make sure you're checking that out. And then we had our Ethan's recommendations. I'm going to work backwards. Crown of the Covenant, which is currently available. That was the sequel to Record of Lotus War, which was recommended by the Axe of Blood God podcast, which was a review for Metaphor Rey Mysterio. There were a lot of words.
Metaphor Re Fantasio. It's a mouthful. I know.
Yeah, like I said, lots of great recommendations there. And then I'm encouraging you guys to play chess. It's always tons of fun. Chess.com, they'll give you that one review a day and tell you how you did, where you messed up, and I don't know how much that helps me. But then you get the JA's pick, which is the Far Side, the complete Far Side, which is great. One of my favorite comic strips back in the day when there were still newspapers. All that and more potentially awaits for you in a wide swath of places, including your comic shop. And then you want more comic shop action, you can check us out on socials. We're on Blue Sky. Occasionally things get uploaded to those other places. Check it out and then circle back to www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, where you can find not only links to all that stuff, but what else, J.A.?
Well, we've got a link to our merch store. You can get hats, you can get coffee mugs, you can get tote bags, T-shirts. I don't know. Do we have a T-shirt with a star on it? We definitely have a T-shirt with our logo on it. And this week only, a special on quiches. So you can get a quiche when you order a shirt.
We're not going to be able to ship a quiche. It's going to go bad.
That Gold Belly, they do quiches.
and next episode I'm on, we're going to blind rank our merchandise. So.
Oh, jeez.
First off is T-shirts.
In which Heather? It's all about the Heathers.
Yes.
Well, also one thing, when you're talking about merchandise, sometimes you get awesome merchandise, comic book related merchandise, pop culture related merchandise, card related merchandise, and where are you going to keep all that stuff? You're going to go out to bcwsupplies.com and you're going to buy awesome things there. But you're not going to pay full price if you use our promo code. That's right, LCSPOD saves you 10% on all of that great stuff that you're going to buy anyways. Whether it's comic book bags, boards, and boxes, whether it's those card collecting supplies, whether it's, those cases that they put football helmets in.
They put them on a shelf and then every so often have to dust it because they're just giant dust collectors.
Yes. So, but if you need a glass box to keep it in, use that promo code LCSPOD at checkout at bcwsupplies.com.
And until next week, we hope you come back for more Last Comic Shop. We'll have Mikey Wood on next week's show, so everybody loves Mikey. Just like they love Ethan Larson. Thanks, Ethan, for stopping by the Last Comic Shop. Until next week, I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by Chad Smith, J.A. Scott, and as I said, Ethan. He was here, and we love him. And until next week, stay safe, stay lucky, because it was just St. Patty's Day the other day. There you go. And remember, if they can dye the river green the one day out of the year, why can't they dye the river blue the other 364 days?
When I came home, there was a one-armed man in my house. You find this man.
So we're going to suffer an artificial death from all those artificial dye jokes.
Comic Shop Podcast was a 2025 Black Angus production.